The Eight Mountains is an Italian adaptation of Paolo Cognetti's novel of the same name, co-written and directed by Felix van Groningen and Charlotte van der Meersch. Along with Polish movie EO, which I've reviewed previously, this won the jury prize at last year's Cannes. It charts the complex, ambiguous friendship between Pietro, an only child who wasn't used to doing things together, and Bruno, who calls himself the last child in the village of Grana, a somewhat abandoned and forgotten village situated in a beautiful mountain area. We followed them over 4 decades with We follow their friendship over 4 decades with 3 different time jumps and both child and adult actors replicating the friendship in each one. Life begins to get more complicated and they drift somewhat as Pietro later drunkenly explains from a story he'd been told on his travels so Pietro could see the 8 mountains across the globe, while Bruno is the type of person who's content climbing the one biggest mountain over and over again. Like movies I've recently spoken about, like 1001 and Return to Seoul, the time jumps all stick the landing when there isn't one section of the movie that the others seem lacking in comparison to. Whether it's the childhood pairing of Lupo Barbero and Cristiano Sassella, or the adults Luca Marinelli and Alessandro Borghi, they managed to find the complex electric chemistry of Pietro and Bruno over and over again. It's quite similar to the excellent Belgian movie Close I reviewed earlier this year, in that there's a definite unexplored sexual energy between the two that the movie doesn't actually seem determined to resolve quickly and just allows to sit there, constantly creating a tension that both acting duos are really able to navigate wonderfully. As well as Close, there are vibes of the likes of Call Me By Your Name, Brokeback Mountain, and episode 3 of The Last of Us with Nick Offerman and Murray Bartlett. The only difference is that where, say, a Call Me By Your Name had the instinct to soar and reach for optimism, The Eight Mountains isn't afraid to be bleak and wistful. It's quietly heartbreaking without ever feeling like it's trying to manipulate you. And I don't know whether I consider this more joyous or a tragic movie. In truth, it's kind of both, but be warned there are sad parts that hit hard at times. The cinematography presented in 4:3 is as breathtaking as you want a movie entitled The Eight Mountains to look. At times, particularly when Pietro or Bruno go climbing with Pietro's father Giovanni, who's another amazing performance to add to the pile, played by Filippo Timi, who gives an amazing powerhouse performance. You feel like you're on the mountain with them, which is an incredibly intense feeling that, no word of a lie, actually started to trigger my vertigo at times. I haven't read the source material, but I imagine the script borrowed considerably from the source, as the writing is effortlessly brilliant in terms of both dialogue and narration. It sounds lyrical and poetic without ever coming across as try-hard or hammy, and never taking away from the characters' gruffness and also their difficulty to be able to fully communicate their feelings or needs. Part of the genius of the writing is knowing when to shut up, to just let Pietro and Bruno share a long, lingering, but crucially still sexually ambiguous look or a hand on the shoulder. In case it isn't abundantly obvious, I loved The Eight Mountains. It's a near flawless effort that even at a meaty 2.5 hours felt like it absolutely zipped by and left me wanting more. It's in cinemas now and really worth your time going out of your way to see.